So if you got any questions about politics, let me know in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a good answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you don't know too much about it, so I'd like to make myself available to people to answer their questions about politics, and you don't got to worry about getting judged or roasted or ridiculed. I don't believe in making people feel stupid or ashamed for not knowing things, and so you can ask me anything that you like. There's no question. There's no such thing as a dumb question. So, it can be as simple or as complicated as you like. Now, I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. It can be like learning a new language. There's all these different three-letter agencies that sometimes people don't explain what they are. If you don't know what the FTC or the FEC or the FDA or the, CFPB is, then people are just referring to these agencies, and you've got absolutely no context for that. Sometimes when we talk about politics, we're just talking about people by their last name. Like if you don't know who Hegseth or Patel or Noam are, then when people are talking about politics, it can feel like you're being completely left out of the conversation. So I am available if you have any questions about any of that stuff. Sometimes we refer to things like reconciliation or continuing resolutions or the filibuster. And if you don't know what that stuff is, it can be really difficult to keep track of what's going on in politics. And so, I am here. I am available to answer all of your questions about politics, regardless of how simple or complicated they may be. I'm not here to roast you or debate you. This is not one of those shows where I have people online, I have people on the stream and I yell at them and I tell them that they're an idiot, or I debate them about, like which is better, left or right, or anything like that. That is not what this show is. This show is just answering questions about politics. So if you got any questions about politics, let me know. I don't care who you voted for. I don't care if you didn't vote. I don't care if you have different political opinions than me. So long as you ask a good faith question, then you will be treated with respect. Sometimes I get a little spicy if people are spicy at me. But generally speaking, if you ask a question in good faith, then I will answer it in good faith. So you don't got to worry about, if I ask this, he's going to think I'm some sort of MAGA lunatic, or if I ask this, he's going to think I'm some sort of libtard cuck. There's no judgments here. There's no roasting. There's no debating. So what's up, Muzz King? Good to see you again. So yeah, just ask questions about politics, and I will do my best to give you a good answer. The real Heisenberg asks, "May I join?" I don't usually have guests on the live stream, but stick around and we'll see how things go. Michelle says, "Where does Elon Musk stand as of today?" That's anybody's guess. I don't really trust anything that's coming out of this administration. So if they are telling us that, he's out or that he's going to be out soon, that is just as good as them telling us nothing, because there's literally no accountability and no connection to what they are saying versus the truth. And so, yeah, I think that for image, for the look of it all, they will probably say that he's out. They're probably hoping that that will help Tesla's share prices, or maybe that will help people's image of what Doge is doing. But I don't buy it for a second. So he's there, he's not there. They're still doing shitty things. They're still doing illegal things. They're still doing unconstitutional things. They're still hurting the 99% so that the rich can be even richer. All right, let's see here. Jacob Lim says, thoughts on gas prices in California? I'm not currently in California, so I don't know what the gas prices are like over there, but I do know that gas prices are going up all over the country, and Donald Trump said he's going to bring gas prices down. So what the fuck's going on there, right, guys? Nicholas says, best guess of Trump's IQ. I don't know if they make numbers that small. Christopher Houston says, you talk too much. Try answering some comments. I just didn't answer the comments. King Boring says, how do you think of 100 days, please? I mean, 100 days is kind of like an arbitrary metric for how, a president is doing. But, it's worthwhile in some veins, I guess. And I would say that Trump's first 100 days have been a fucking catastrophe, exactly the way that I said they were going to. Anne Marie Kolb says, what do you think? Is Trump doing a good job? Absolutely not. 0% is he doing a good job. What is democracy? Democracy is a form of government whereby people are able to vote for things, whether that is representatives or specific legislation, ballot referendums, etc. Jackson Paris says, Dems hope Dems S13 Hope they get the tattoo to support today. I don't know what that means. Let's see here. Dale Wayne Bailey says, no, he's not. You will have to be more specific. I don't know what you're referring to. Loda says, I think he's doing a good job, better than Biden. Well, Loda, I would ask you then why you think that. Because by every conceivable metric, he's doing a terrible job. The stock market is crashing. They are cutting services that the 99% need. We are a joke on the world stage. We are being cut out of global trade. So yeah, I don't know where you think that is coming from, you know? Evil Dordes says, America first. Okay, well, that's not a question. That's your first warning. If you don't ask questions, then you are in danger of getting banned. So listen, everybody. Hello, my name is Jared. I'm just here to answer your questions about politics. There's no debating, there's no roasting, there's no ridicule. I am just here to answer your good faith questions about politics. All right, King Boring says, how do you think of the conflict between order and freedom? I think it's a false dichotomy. You know, like we can have order and freedom at the same time, but the problem is that we've been putting way too much money and resources into not the way to solve the problem. So, like, you know, they will justify things like spying on American citizens or allowing the police to, you know, straight up murk people without accountability in the name of, you know, reducing crime or restoring order. But if we just invested more money into poor communities and made it so that people who were poor could get out of poverty without having to resort to crime, then we would see drastic reductions in crime, more so than if we just put more money and power into the hands of the police department. Right now, we have like the most well-funded police department and the least accountable police department in the Western world, and we still have crime. So I think we know where solving the problem does not lie. Brown Nino says, can Trump really be elected again, and what's the possibility? So I don't know what the possibility is. The way that it works is it is fully unconstitutional for him to try to be president for another term, whether that is him running for president again or declaring martial law and canceling elections or shit like that. Now, whether or not he's going to get away with it and what are the odds of him getting away with it is anybody's guess. But he tried to overturn the election in 2020 and he failed. He failed because good people did the work of making sure that that insurrection failed. Will there be good people who make sure that his next attempt fails, whether he, you know, petitions Congress to give him a waiver to run for a third term, whether the Supreme Court lets him get away with running for a third term, or whether we put up with him trying to cancel the 2028 elections? You know, like it is completely up to whether people do the work. You know, it is, what is that? Is that an MLK quote where he says the only thing that evil needs is for good people to do nothing? Something like that. King Boring says, how will the tariff war against the world end with? I mean, if it's the entire world against America, then we're going to get our asses kicked. We are currently seeing that happening right now. Kay Sarah says, why do the Democrats lie about everything? We don't lie about everything, Kay Sarah. You know, if you watch right-wing media, you are statistically less well-informed than somebody who doesn't even read the news. Right-wing politicians lie more than left-wing politicians. So if your media and your politicians are doing nothing but lie to you, then what makes you think that Democrats are the ones that are lying? Let's see here. John Blau says, if Trump has access to AI and all smart and knowledge pros, so why is he out of control? I'm not really sure what that question means, John. Sorry about that. Lo Da says, I watch both. They're all liars. That is not a productive thing to say, Lo Da, because there are good politicians and bad politicians. There are better political parties and worse political parties. And when you lump them all together in one category, all you're doing is giving cover for the worst actor. If you got two people and one of them is like wildly corrupt and you know won't stop lying, and you got another person who doesn't lie and isn't corrupt, but you say both of them are equally corrupt, then the guy who is most corrupt gets to do whatever he wants because, you know, for all intents and purposes, there's no difference between the two of them, you know? So the Democratic Party is not perfect, but it is way, 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 way better than the Republican Party. Democratic politicians aren't perfect, but they are way, 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 way better than Republican politicians. And I can support this if you have any questions, you know, if you want me to go into any more detail on this. But yeah, this is something that I am very well informed about. So if you want me to go into specifics about issues or specific politicians, let me know. All right, everybody, welcome to the live stream. If you got any questions, let me know. I'm here to answer all of your good faith questions about politics. DJ Maine says, I live in Seattle and The ports are empty. I'm scared. Yeah, I mean, we are looking at some serious supply chain issues considering the chaos of the Trump tariff strategy. So, we don't know. We don't know if shelves will be empty soon. People are saying May, June is when things are going to really start crashing. That the stock market is going to, take some really serious hits soon. I don't do predictions, so I can't say if that stuff is going to happen. But I will just say that it is looking concerning. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. K. Sarah says Democrats lost when they used the court to go after Trump. K. Sarah, you're not asking questions, so if you do not ask another question with your comment, then I'm going to boot you out of here. But as far as using the courts to go after Trump, that didn't happen. There is no evidence or data to suggest that any of the Justice Department's inquiries into Donald Trump were politically motivated. And what I would ask you as like a thought exercise is, if Trump really did all the crimes that he was accused of, how would what the Justice Department is doing look any different than what they're doing now? The answer is there is no difference, because Trump did the crimes. He did them out in front. He did them out in the open, so we all fucking saw it. And the Justice Department went after him because he did a whole bunch of crimes. So yeah, if you got any more questions about that, let me know. King Boring says, with AI fully replace politicians in political strategy making in the future? I don't know. AI, I'm always seeing reports about how it is always, making things up or is wildly inaccurate. But then I'm also seeing all these reports about like how the next generation is so much better than the new generation. So yeah, I don't know. We're in a weird wait and see moment with artificial intelligence where it is sucking up tons of electricity. It is completely undoing all of the gains of the massive investment that we made in green technology during the Biden administration. And it's this thing that doesn't even fucking work all that well. And we are currently being controlled by an authoritarian administration that doesn't give a shit about protecting the 99%. So I don't really trust any guardrails that they could potentially put on artificial intelligence going forward. They could mandate that artificial intelligence has to say that Donald Trump is the most amazing human being on the planet and has never made any mistakes. Are you going to trust a machine that is telling you bullshit like that? California Sunset 760 says, should the U.S. be nuked for the safety of the rest of the world? Absolutely not. I do not condone any kind of violence, loss of life, destruction of property, stuff like that. User Upper Numbers says, we goods are most likely to disappear assuming tariffs continue for the next couple of months. That I am unsure of. So sorry, I cannot answer that for you. Miles Enjugo says, how do you feel about AOC running for president? I mean, I think she's great. I will support her no matter what she does. If she runs for president, then the primary will decide whether or not she gets to be the nominee. I would say that if it was her running for Senate in New York, that I would support her for that as well. I would love to have a new Senate Majority Leader, somebody that is not, what do you call it? Someone that is not old and part of the centrist wing of the Democratic Party. Philip Barusi says, Donald Trump call media false never on the comes out of his mouth. You're gonna have to clean up that sentence, my man. BB fan, good to see you again. Says, do you think CBS has any chance against Trump? So they have a case. It's just whether or not they want to fight the case. Like it is what Trump is doing is illegal and unconstitutional. Like he does not have any serious way to justify going after CBS. It is a blatant First Amendment violation. It is an attack against freedom of the press. But it will take a lot of money for CBS to fight it. And because Trump is in charge of the federal government, there are a lot of mechanisms that he could use to punish CBS in the meantime, and make that whole process a lot harder. A lot of these, law firms and media groups and colleges have been acquiescing to Trump because they have made the calculation that it is much more, what do you call it? It's just going to be easier to pay him off, The problem with authoritarians is that they're never done fucking getting their pound of flesh. They're just going to keep on coming back to the well and asking for more and pushing more and pushing more. So my recommendation, and nobody really listens to me, but my recommendation would be, all these groups should work together and stand together against Trump administration because, if it's not Columbia, it's Harvard. If it's not CBS, it's the Associated Press. If it's not law firm A, it'll be law firm B. But if they all stand together, then they actually have a chance of, pressuring this administration to stop their illegal and unconstitutional actions. And we're already seeing that, like they already, walked back their attacks against Harvard and said, that was a mistake. We didn't mean to send that email. When really, if they had acquiesced, they would have been like, yeah, we did that on purpose. We're great negotiators, etc. Sam says gas will go down toward fall. The oil field is revving up. Sam, that's not a question. If you don't ask a question, I'm going to boot you. Also, that is wildly wishful thinking. Let's see here. Trump says all media is fake, but they never report on the garbage comes out of his mouth. The media is often reporting on the garbage that's coming out of his mouth, so I'm not really sure what you mean there. Lauren, good to see you again. Colin says, is it a concern that RFK's family gave his aunt a lobotomy? Yeah, that is a concern. Big Boy Angie says, dude, get a real job. I do have a real job. Banging your mom. BB Hawk says, is Trump the worst thing to come to America? I think so. Let's see here. Sam Wendelin says, firsthand knowledge, why you think not? So first of all, firsthand knowledge, we've got no fucking idea who you are. You could be a Russian troll. We've got no fucking idea if you are who you say you are. You can insist that you work in the oil fields and you have firsthand information about it, but everybody on the internet is a liar, unless you are seeing their actual face and their actual name, and you can double check who they are with other resources. That I'm a real person because I'm using my real ass fucking name. I got a whole fucking website. I tour the country as a stand-up comedian. I've got dozens, thousands, hundreds of videos or some shit like that. So yeah, I'm a real fucking person, but who the fuck are you? I don't know. Second of all, every economist is talking about the effect of these tariffs on our trade and the fact that we are not fully energy independent. It is going to mean that any energy that we try to import from other countries is going to be wildly more expensive thanks to the Trump tariffs, in addition to like knock-on effects of the other tariffs. So I think it is, I think it is not a great prediction that gas prices are going to go down in the fall or something. This guy says, okay, Goldstein, that is anti-Semitic. So I am going to get rid of you. G Money says, I do not exist. I think you do. Colin says, if you don't support capital punishment, how would you lower murder rates? That's a really good question. We do have data on that, though, Colin. Like, we do know that the death penalty does not actually reduce crime. It doesn't reduce violent crime. It doesn't reduce any kind of crime. It is not a good, incentive for somebody who's going to do murder anyways. Those people tend not to be deterred by things, So yeah, but how do you actually solve, murder? The first thing I would do is I would make sure that people are taken care of, because, when people feel helpless and scared and they have nothing to lose, that's when they do really drastic things like that. So we got to take care of the poor and marginalized communities in this country. We got to make people feel like they are not desperate. Desperate people are the ones who do the crimes. And then maybe there are people out there who are just like serial killers and sick people who are going to do murders regardless. Those people are not going to get stopped by the death penalty. And I would just say, access to mental health to potentially catch those people before they, before they start going down the path. You know what I mean? All right, Patrick Schultz, good to see you again. Sanjan says, will MAGA outlive Trump, whose health is failing, knowing that Trump light doesn't work? I am skeptical that the MAGA movement works without Trump. Potentially one of his kids could take up the mantle. I think that the name Trump is part of what people are attracted to, in addition to like his whole shtick of getting on stage and sounding like a fucking idiot. So yeah, I imagine unless it goes to like a Don Jr. or Ivanka, that the entire movement kind of fizzles away. Ooh. I'm worried about some of the other Republicans that have been trying to paint themselves as economic populists, like Josh Hawley, because they're all completely full of shit. It's like you wouldn't be a Republican hawking trickle-down economics if you really gave a shit about things like income inequality or the excesses of the billionaire class. All right, scrolling down to the bottom of the comments. Adam Leahy says, Chris Rock's idea about making ammo costs $5,000 per round would have a profound effect. Yeah, I think it's not a bad idea. Serious George says, is this MS-13 business Photoshop? Yes, it was. And I think it is It is completely disqualifying, and I think it should tell people a lot that when confronted by a reporter who was actually fact checking the things that Trump said, Trump didn't go like, "Oh, was it? Oh, I don't think it's." He said, "You're not being nice to me." He just views anybody who is, correcting him on the facts and not letting him lie about shit as not being nice to me. And it's like, that's the way a child fucking operates. It should be completely disqualifying for anybody. It should be disqualifying for his entire fucking political party who's letting him get away with the shit. Lauren says, "Do you think there will ever be a line for MAGA?" They keep moving the goalposts. I don't. The MAGA crowd are so firmly, enveloped in right wing propaganda that I've said it before, I'll say it again. Trump could literally be taking a shit on these people's faces. And so long as they're watching the right news channel, they can be convinced that the shit is falling out of Trump's butt and onto their faces because of trans kids and immigrants and Democrats. Now, again, I've said this 1,000 times, I'll say it 1,000 more. That does not mean that they are stupid. That does not mean that they have a monopoly on getting tricked and conned. There are plenty of left-wing people who got tricked into not voting or voting for Donald Trump in 2024. So yeah, everybody needs to recognize that social media is a fucking misinformation and propaganda machine, and that you're being fed narratives that are specifically trying to get you to either vote for Republicans or not vote at all. Sanjad says, "Terry Moran interview was wild. Do you think more reporters will start calling out his bullshit?" I mean, it kind of ebbs and flows. We saw the same thing happen during the first Trump administration, where a reporter will stand up to Trump. He will start yelling and screaming about how the media is so unfair to him. His team will set up a whole bunch of interviews with people like Fox News and Ben Shapiro and the Daily Caller and shit like that. And then, eventually he will, invite some legacy media back in. They will either do a good job or a bad job. And then, depending on the job that they do, he will say that it is unfair, and then he will go back to his safe space. Serious George says, "How do you think the U.S. government policy will evolve or not with AI? More inequality, less?" So I've heard this argument that the fact that AI is so unbelievably expensive means that companies are investing in it because it will be a barrier to entry, meaning that, if we have complete control of this thing that is like wildly expensive, then nobody else will be able to do it besides us. So yeah, the way that it looks right now, and especially everything with the Trump administration, is designed to increase inequality. So yeah, I am not confident that AI is going to be a leveling factor. I think what's going to happen more likely than not is that it's going to start replacing jobs before we have a government that actually is interested in taking care of people who have lost their jobs to AI. And it is another reason why I advocate that nobody ever vote for Republicans, because they don't give a shit about you losing your job to AI. If the company, if the giant fucking company like Walmart is making more money doing that shit, they're like, okay, yeah, well, you should get a different job, or maybe you should just, be smarter. Maybe you should have been born rich. Let's see here. Thoughts on man-arco distributionism. I don't know what that is. Angel of Life Community Church says, mega, 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 President Trump, President Trump. That's not a question. It's not even a sentence. So you are out of here. All right. Happy Lemon says, thoughts on new reports that Biden administration never pressured Israel for a ceasefire. So I haven't seen that reporting, Happy Lemon, but we know that he did put pressure on Israel for a ceasefire because they canceled sending 2,000-pound bombs to Israel. That was part of the negotiating. We also know that there were sanctions on illegal Israeli settlements in the West Bank that the Trump administration reversed. He also reversed the, canceling sending 2,000-pound bombs to Israel. So yeah, the pressure was there. There was public pressure. I don't know if there was private pressure or not. There was substantive legislative pressure. It wasn't enough for my money, not by a fucking light year. It should have been way, way more. But there was pressure, and it was more pressure than Trump is putting on. And Trump is even, encouraging what Netanyahu is doing by, again, canceling the sanctions, resuming 2,000-pound bombs, openly advocating for ethnically cleansing Palestine. He's basically giving Netanyahu a green light to do as many war crimes and genocides as he fucking wants. Additionally, I believe that Harris indicated that she would have been even stronger against Israel than Biden was. I don't think that there are a lot of far left activists out there who will agree with me on that, but that is what it looked like from my perspective. And again, Kamala Harris would have been better than Biden. Biden was better than Trump on this issue. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Shay Cruel, good to see you again. Thoughts on Ron Casey DeSantis Hope Foundation scandal? I believe that Ron DeSantis is exactly the kind of person to reappropriate funds in order to put them into his pocket or into his campaign's pockets. I don't know if anything's going to come from this because, again, where Republicans and right-wing judges are concerned, they really don't give a shit about rule of law. If you are on their team, they will take care of you. It is the way that authoritarian regimes work. If we like you, then we won't make you suffer the consequences of all of our shitty policies and shit like that. Nico says, yeah, typical, ignoring the questions that hurt you. I haven't seen any questions that hurt me. Amarella says, do you think if the media stopped covering Trump, he would melt down? I have a theory about that. I think that, mainstream reporters, not right-wing reporters, should stop asking Trump questions because that's how you deal with a bully. You ignore them, and he's just going to lie about things anyways. I'm not going to die on that hill. I'm sure that an argument could be made that when he answers questions as bullshittily as he does, that there's some value to that maybe people see the obvious lies there. But I don't know. I think that we should start invalidating any media that continues to cover Trump. If we have legacy media stopping talking about, asking him questions. You can report on the things that he's doing, but actually asking him questions so that he can obfuscate and make shit up, I don't know what the value is there necessarily. But again, I'm not going to die on that hill. That's just a theory that I have. All right. Philip Barusi says, is it true that 90% of weather is owned? 90% of weather? I don't think weather's owned by anybody. Scoob E says, why can't we just accept that eating? All right, that is not a real question. Nico says, you ignored all the questions I asked. I haven't seen any of the questions that you've asked. Let's see here. Leeds60 says, and why are we still bombing in Yemen? You will have to ask the Trump administration about that. All right. Yeah, Nico, I'm scrolling up and I'm still not seeing any of your questions. So maybe you put it again. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe TikTok is blocking your questions because it's something that goes against their community guidelines. Dr. Bob Fanboy says AI taking jobs is why we should be moving towards UBI and more socialist way of living. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think universal basic income is a great job is a great idea. As we are losing jobs to mechanization and artificial intelligence, we are going to need a place for people to go. I think that we make the world a better place when people don't have to worry about being able to afford, let people do the things that we can do great, not everybody has to be fucking, a cog in the machine, Lead60 says, how is Trump getting away with deporting American citizen children? So he's kind of getting away with it and he's kind of not getting away with it. Like a lot of the things that he's doing are being challenged in the courts. Now, there are a lot of people in the Trump administration and throughout the judiciary that are on Trump's side. So it is really difficult for any sort of consequences or accountability to make its way through to a point where we are seeing the return of, people like Abrigo Garcia and, a bunch of other people who were illegally and unconstitutionally, deported and shit like that. But it's difficult, it's like a fucking, it's like a labyrinth that, these decisions, they go through certain judges and then the decisions get fought by the Trump administration and then they lie about them in the press. And so it's hard work. It's hard work navigating the process of trying to make sure that there's accountability in an authoritarian government. So yeah, political pressure really does mean something. So if you are close to one of those levers of power, either a Republican senator or a Republican House member, if you live in one of their districts, if you are working in the judicial system and you can be part of the system of accountability, if you are a U.S. Marshal and you are told by a judge that that you need to arrest, Tom Human for, fucking crimes against humanity, and your superior, Pam Bondi, says, don't actually do that, I'm ordering you not to do that, then, you have a choice. You have a choice to do the right thing or do the wrong thing. But yeah, that's what's so scary about this time is that the structures that we set up in this country, like our Bill of Rights and, legal precedents and things like that, none of that shit means anything in an authoritarian regime. It's just, do we like you? Because if we don't, then we will do whatever the fuck we want. And we are seeing that play out repeatedly over Trump's first 100 days. It's terrifying, It's that fucking poem, you know. First they came for the blanks, and I said nothing because I wasn't a blank, you know, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't know which poem I'm talking about, fucking give it a Google. That is literally what is going on right now. If you don't think that they are going to come for you because you're a good Christian Republican or whatever, maybe, but maybe not. You know, you got no fucking idea with these people. That's what's so dangerous. If you watch anything, you know, any movie or read any history about authoritarianism, you see this shit all the time. People that think that they are playing the game and, you know, adhering to the rules, they can get swept up in this shit. You know, like fucking V for Vendetta. Natalie Portman's character was just a fucking reporter on her way walking home. She almost got raped by some fucking fingermen, and then she had to become a fucking fugitive. You know, so that's the way that it works. That's the way that it works in authoritarianisms. Mario Orta says, "Why do we have a two-party system?" I'm not really sure the history of it. That is not my strong suit. Dan Blackwood, good to see you again. Says, "I'm sure Mike Pence never thought they'd turn on him." Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, if you think they're never going to come after you because you're a good Christian, you know, I will refer you to the Hang Mike Pence episode that happened on January 6th of 2020. 76J2 pieces. What countries have been able to recover democracy after being affected by autocracy? You know, I mean, first of all, Germany. But as far as like a comprehensive list, I unfortunately don't have one ready for you. But they do exist, and it's happened many, many times in the past. Let's see here. Markets price in an increased probability of a recession. I don't know what that means, Jay Carr. Serious George says Congress Dems don't have many tools to stop Trump's orders. Do you see Republicans shifting at all? Yes, we are seeing an effective political pressure on both Trump administration and elected Republicans. It's a little, it's cracks in the foundation. They haven't stopped. They are still in the process of doing the authoritarian shit. They are still being bad people. But, you know, it would be worse if people weren't doing the work, if people weren't boycotting and protesting and striking and making their phone calls and hounding their elected representatives, etc. Like all of this stuff makes a difference. And the more people that do it, the more difference it makes. So sometimes people can look around and be like, you know, we did all this work during the Trump administration the first time and it didn't really do anything. And I'm like, no, it did. It did a lot of stuff. You know, it was a fucking massively successful harm reduction strategy. We got him out of office. And yeah, a lot of shit got hurt in the meantime and people died. And there's a lot of repairing of our relationships that we had to do, but it could have been a lot fucking worse. And we almost saw it being worse on January 6th, you know? So yeah, do the work, everybody. Do not get discouraged if you don't see exactly the kind of progress that you want to see. It all makes a difference. It all pushes the needle. I got really misty watching the Andor recap for season 1 before I started season 2, and that one dude's manifesto that they read over the, you know, over the roundup fucking got me so misty. And it's literally about what's going on right now. He's saying every action makes a difference. Every action pushes the needle, and it does, and it really does. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Eric says, got him out, then he go right back in. I mean, that's because of billionaires. That is because billionaires propagated a mountain of propaganda that convinced people to either vote for Republicans or to not vote at all. And it was bullshit, and it was all lies, and we are seeing that happening now. Serious George says, also, do you think it is constitutional to ban TikTok on the grounds it is a national security threat? I don't think that. It doesn't really, I should say this. It doesn't really matter what I think about that. Both Republicans and Democrats in Congress looking at the information said that, and the Supreme Court also said that. So, you know, and now that I said that, I'm sure that I'm going to get like banned or some shit like that. Hydras Inc. says, should we overturn Citizens United? Absolutely, 100%. Best, easiest question I've answered all day. Mario Ortra says, why are we middle class and poor always the targets and usually pay the price? Because of rich people, my man. Mario, it is entirely the fault of rich people. We are constantly being told to tighten our belts and do without so that billionaires can get even more money. It is trickle-down economics. It is bullshit. It does not work. And Republicans are still fucking hyping that shit up as though it's a fucking thing. It is one of a million reasons why I don't think any human being should ever vote for any Republican, because they are 100% full of shit and in the pocket of the billionaire class. Cat Adventures PNW says, Jarrett, hi. Hi, Cat Adventures PNW. Do I know you, Cat Adventures? PNW. Let's see here. India Winkster says, "How do we get out of this?" The way that we get out of this is that we do the work. We recruit other people to do the work, because the more people that do the work, the less work that we all have to do. And what is the work? The work is doing what citizens can always do, which is boycotting, protesting, striking, putting political pressure on our elected representatives, and voting. It is also important that we talk to people in real life, because billionaires are flooding media and social media with propaganda narratives that are trying to convince people to either vote for Republicans or not vote at all. And we need to be correcting those narratives. We need to be correcting people who have learned inaccurate things off of social media or the regular ass news, whatever they're fucking watching. And we have to have those conversations in person, because they just get drowned out when you try to have them over social media. So yeah, talk to your friends, your family, your neighbors, your coworkers, the people that already know you and love you and respect you, because that's going to go a lot farther than just if I knock on their door. I'm just some fucking random Jew, and not a lot of people. Some people are very hostile towards random Jews. Let's see here. Is it true that 90% of the wealth is owned by 0.3% of the population? I don't know if that's the exact statistic, but that sounds about right. Cat Adventures says, I saw a virtual show, I guess 5 years ago during COVID. Oh, well, it's good to see you again then, Cat Adventures. Thank you for being here. Stephanie B says, I'm having a hard time conceptualizing Trump's endgame. What do you think? So if things go the way that Trump wants, here's like his ideal version of what goes on, okay? There is no accountability for any of the things that he has done that are illegal and unconstitutional. He is able to replace everybody in the government who is not a Trump loyalist, and so anything that he says goes. If he writes an executive order that says birthright citizenship is gone, then birthright citizenship is gone, etc. He wants everybody in the 99% to be poor and desperate and without any recourse besides pleading to the billionaire class to take care of them. It's the fucking medieval times version of a society where the serfs till the land and the rich people get to live whatever kind of fucking life they want. He could potentially, make things so bad that people start protesting, and potentially there are violent incursions with law enforcement officers. Trump will use that as an excuse to declare martial law, cancel elections and things like that, declare himself president for life. The presidency then becomes like a title that gets handed down to your children. And then, what do you call it? Then Trump Jr. becomes president, and then Barron Trump, and, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that's basically the long and short of it. They want us to be desperate. They want us to have no rights. They want us to have no legal recourse. If you can imagine a scenario like fucking, Les Miserables, where, you get fired for not putting out for your boss, that is currently illegal. But in an authoritarian regime, especially one that is populated by people who have been credibly accused of sexual assaults, potentially you have no legal recourse for that whatsoever. You just get fired, you get thrown out on the streets, and then the innkeepers who are taking care of your child learn from Jean Valjean that you have passed away because of syphilis or fucking whatever, and that you guys know how the musical ends. Anyways, scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments. Kimmy says, remember the coal miners? Yeah, the coal miners who I just learned today are upset because the Trump administration has made cuts to black lung monitoring programs. So now coal miners are in even more distress, and their health is even more at risk than it was before. So congratulations. Alrighty, let's see here. TechRuven says, do you think we're close to seeing shelves empty due to the tariffs? That is what economists are saying. That is what a lot of the anecdotal data is saying. People are saying, ports are empty and shit like that. So yeah, I don't know. I can't make a prediction about that, but I would just say that every conceivable metric makes it seem like that is the thing. Let's see here. Okie dokie. All right. Leeds 60 says, do you think there's anything Trump will do that we can throw him out? The only way that we get rid of Trump is by electing Democrats into Congress. That is the only way. The Republicans, doesn't matter what Trump could do, he could strangle Ted Cruz to death on the Senate floor, and they would still not vote to remove him from office. Maybe Ted Cruz is the wrong example, because literally everybody hates Ted Cruz. So yeah, that's the only way. That's the only way, is electing Democrats en masse. And I am telling people that we should aim for taking over the House and also getting a two-thirds majority in the Senate. It is possible, but extremely unlikely that we would be able to get that many Democratic seats in 2026. It's mathematically probable, like there are that many seats available, but some of those seats are in deep red states. But here's the thing: politically impossible things happen all the time. I will refer you to the first and second Trump administration. So yeah, if we do the work, if we the people do the work of activating, organizing, convincing, and recruiting, then potentially we get there. There's also a line in that TV show Third Rock from the Sun where it's like, if you want to punch someone in the face, aim for the back of the head. Let's aim for 67 seats in the Senate, however unlikely it might be that we get that, and maybe we get more than we could have bargained for. If you want to be more strategic about this, there is a great organization called Vote Save America that finds the most vulnerable races, the ones that are most likely to flip. Put your effort in there if you want. But, like if you live in a deep red state and you have a deep red Republican senator and you know who is running against them on the Democratic ticket and you want to support that person with your time and energy, and you live in that state so you know people who could vote for that Democrat instead of that Republican, like, I don't think you should not try to do that. Also, because all that effort that we put in on that election, even if we lose, now we have a little bit more of a what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit more of a infrastructure for winning those elections in the future. Everybody that you convince, everybody whose eyes you opened, is another potential voter, is another potential activist, is another potential volunteer. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Guess who farted? This guy says, you are delusional. You spelled your wrong. Guess who farted? This guy. So you can miss me with that shit. India Wingster says, how are you preparing for the upcoming recession? We're just cutting down on our spending, and we are kind of readjusting some of our investments. But yeah, we're just kind of trying to keep our powder dry as much as we can. BB Fan says, have you seen much in planning for tomorrow's event? I don't know what tomorrow's event is. Eric says, I'm independent but am unhappy. Why are you an independent, Eric, and not a Democrat? Let's see here. Kimmy says, get a bidet. Yeah, bidets are great. I agree with Kimmy. Rottweiler says, Mayday. Yeah, I don't know anything about it, but, I support all kinds of peaceful protests and all sorts of activism, so I'm down, Let's see here. There's some weird ass noise happening outside my hotel room. Okay, let's see here. Scrolling down to the bottom. World labor protest. Oh, I'm down for that. Yeah, fucking let's do it, man. Eric says, I'm independent, but unhappy with politics and corruption of both parties. So, Eric, do you agree with me that corruption is more of a problem on the Republican side than the Democrat side? Because if you don't, I have some information that I would love to share with you. All right. India Wingster says, old Dems are fighting against David Hogg. How can we help David? I'm not really sure. He is currently the vice president of the DNC, I think, right? And yeah, I think that a lot of this stuff probably has to do with public pressure, So I don't know. I've never tried to contact the DNC or make my voice heard where that is concerned. But yeah, I would definitely give that a Google because I like what David Hogg is doing also. Hogue? Not Hogg. David Hogue. Milo Hyder says, do you support Palestine? I support the people living in Palestine. I support the people living in Israel. I do not support the Netanyahu government. I also do not support Hamas. Dan Blackwood says, David Hogue can handle himself. He's been getting death threats since he was a teenager. Yeah, the dude is fucking... Yeah, the dude's a fucking animal. He's a beast. He's brave as hell. 2 thumbs up for that dude. Lead says, did you see that Amazon is putting price before tariffs and price after tariffs information? I did not see that, but I think every company should be doing that. Let's see here. Colin says, does the U.S. have state capture where private business people pull the strings of the politician? Have state capture where private business people pull the strings of the politicians. Yes, that is a massive problem. Money in politics is a massive problem. It is a massive problem that Republicans are making worse and that Democrats are trying to make better, but not every Democrat is trying to make better. I will I think it is important to be clear-eyed about which Democrats are shitty on this issue. Democrats like Nancy Pelosi, who think that insider trading is completely fine if you are an elected representative. But on the net, if you want to get money out of politics and if you want business people to not be able to pull the strings of politicians going forward, you got to vote for Democrats, guys. That's just the fucking move. Let's see here. BB Fan says, I read that Amazon has already caved on that pricing strategy. Rottweiler says, Democrats, aka JV fascists. I don't agree with that at all, Rottweiler. Also, that's not a question. And if you don't have questions, you get blocked. Marcia says, Trump for Pope. Yeah, sure. Christopher Houston says, don't talk to him. He talks too much, never answers. I answer lots of questions, Christopher. You put too many periods in your sentence. Mr. Tuyo says Amazon said that was never true and they were never going to do that. Well, they should do that if they're not. Garrett says we are the second largest car producer in the world, first in crude energy and oil, first in aerospace. That is not a question, Garrett, so ask a question or you're going to get blocked. Alrighty. Serious George, who do you think will be the 2028 nominee for the Republican and Democratic parties? If Trump is alive, Trump will always be the Republican nominee. It does not matter that he's already served 2 terms. It does not matter if he is currently in jail. He will always be the Republican nominee so long as he is kicking. As far as Democratic nominees go, I am not going to start talking about 2028 until the 2026 midterm is over. I do not want people to be ignoring the 2026 midterms. I don't want people to be thinking about 2028 when we got 2026 midterms coming up and we got tons of work to do to try to run the table on the 2026 midterms. Everybody fucking do that shit. Scrolling down to the bottom, BB Fan says, how was Trump received in Michigan last night? I did not see anything about that. Chris Houston says, you do realize you talk BS. You do realize you do put too many periods in your comments. Also, you're blocked. Real Yeah Music says, would Vance be better right now than Trump? Yes. Vance would be better, not by a lot, but he would be better. There are a lot of things that Trump is good at that Vance would not be good at. You would start seeing the Republican Party reverting much more towards a Mitt Romney style conservatism, a Liz Cheney style conservatism that rejects, Trumpism. What's the word I'm saying? If Trump went away, but it wouldn't be good. It wouldn't be good. I'll be right back. Thank you. All right, everybody. My lunch just arrived, so I am going to be, what do you call it? I'm going to be dipping out pretty soon, everybody. Garrett says, hey, man, it's your choice, but blocking people that have different opinions isn't going to help. Garrett, I don't block people that have different opinions. I block people that troll. I block people that annoy me. I block people that don't ask questions. It's very simple. It's a very simple calculation that I'm doing here. I don't care. You can ask me anything that you want. If you have politics that are further to the right than me, I don't give a shit. But if you are just spamming the comments with "you're full of shit," "you fucking suck," "you're a cuck," "Trump 2028," "Trump forever," "Trump's the best," then you're out of here, Garrett. Let's see here. I'm not saying that you said that, Garrett, but I haven't blocked you, Garrett. I haven't blocked you, have I? Ciaran says, is law under attack? 100%. All right, everybody, I'm going to go eat my lunch. Thank you for being here. My schedule is very erratic these days because I'm currently on the road. So please check back and see when I'm going to be streaming next. And catch me when you can catch me. If there were any questions that I was not able to get to on this live stream, my DMs are open. Please support me in any way that you can, whether it's the free kind, like liking and sharing and telling your friends how great my live streams are, or you can do the financial kind. I have a Patreon. I got a Substack. I got, you can fucking follow me on all the fucking socials. You know what I mean? And just please do the work, everybody. Please do the work. The more people that do this work, the less work that we all have to do. I do not have enough gas in the tank to knock on as many doors as it would take for me to win 67 seats in the Senate for Democrats. So do the work with me, guys. Do the work with me. All right, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye. Maybe I'll see you tomorrow. I don't know what my schedule's like. Bye-bye. 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 Goodbye. 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 Goodbye.